Welcome to the Predictive Playbook Basketball Edition. I'm your host, John Ryan. I'm pleased to have my two good friends here, Tony Finn and Rob Veno of WagerTalk.com, to break down the games for this Saturday and also to review some of the games that they had last night, because it sounded to me like they did pretty well last night. And it's not unusual for these guys to go off on a tear and win, 6 out of 7 days in a row. So welcome to the show, gentlemen. And I am interested to know how you fared last night with the books.
Tone?
The good news should go first. You, Rob, go first. You go first.
Well, I mean, it's not even great news. I mean, I'm 2-2 last night. I was telling you guys off air that I was counting on Portland to make it a winning night. 2-1 heading in there, and thought that, with the Nets travel cross country, little shorthanded. I mean, I know they've been winning with only James Harden, and they did it once again. Tony, I tell you, it's crazy to look at the surrounding cast that he has.
Yeah.
And understanding the surrounding cast that he had in Houston, which was, player for player. If you're in the playground choosing sides, you're not taking any of the Nets. You're taking all of those Rockets. And still, without a lot of weapons to help him, they somehow come through. Boy, they play well as a collective unit. 116, 112, Portland goes down. That's a long-winded way of saying we went 2-2 last night and paid Vig to the house.
Think what you will, believe what you will about James Harden. Have your opinions on whether you would have a beer with James Harden. But James Harden is, I never liked the offense that he orchestrated and engineered and choreographed in Houston because it was James dribble the ball to half court, look at the clock, wait till there's about 7 seconds left, and either go to the rim or do a step back and sink a three-pointer. It's amazing how many people will tell you, they'll argue with you, they'll passionately preach the fact that this guy's not an all-star, not an MVP, never going to be a Hall of Famer, because there's so many things that he doesn't do that they believe that Hall of Famers should do. Now, that said, everybody's different, but what he's done and what he's doing with this Nets team, I think, is just another notch in his gun. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun to see what happens, guys, when Durant and Irving both get on the floor with him. I mean, there's going to be another readjustment period. Kyrie seems to take these personal vacations. I don't want to call them vacations because I really don't know what the reasoning is. I mean, it could be serious for all I know, But, I mean, when he doesn't – it's funny how randomly he just doesn't play.
Yeah.
1 game, 2 game, 4 games. And this is another one of those stretches where, tonight they're on back-to-backs. They're in Utah, in some altitude. Kyrie's not present, and James Harden is going to have to go back-to-back and do it again with these guys. And the line at Utah minus 10.5 probably reflects how bookmakers feel.
It's insane. I think the line is a little bit it's tainted for several reasons. But I looked at that. I ran from that screaming like a little girl because I do not want to see that number again and make some stupid decision. So I'm out of that room. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Yeah. Well, the thing with Harden is that there's no defense. And I think last week he was, of the starters, whether he's a point guard or a shooting guard, he would be last in the plus minus.
Yeah.
I think his last 3 triple doubles, the team has lost. So to your point, what good is a triple double if your team loses? But his defense is horrible.
I think that's accurate. Let's put it this way: I think he's capable of being a much better defender than he is. That this is who he chooses to be, and there's energy to be. There's something to be said about being a two-way player, and I use that phrase. It's more of a football term, but that said, the one thing about what he does is that plus minus. For instance, we talked about that. It just doesn't seem. He just doesn't seem to fit the mold of what we believe, and all of us are a little old school, about being able to get a stop, play defense. But But we were all talking about the Portland Trailblazers and Lillard and the cast and characters he has around him, guys, and what he did. See, I have McCollum. McCollum is one of the most difficult players for any NBA team as far as what they have behind McCollum on that bench for Portland. If Harden goes down, you got a couple guys. You got Irving can take the point. The problem is when McCollum goes down, they really don't have an equivalent, a one player that even is maybe 2 or 3 points off of your predicted plus minus. But without McCollum, they were amazing. What they did, what Lillard did, what that group did collectively was amazing. So the second half is going to be really fun. We have a really big couple days ahead of us, and that is who is a seller, who is a buyer, and who's going to end up where. It should be fairly interesting, I think.
Yeah, and the Sixers, they're leading the league in the Eastern Conference. They're only a game behind the Utah Jazz right now for the overall best record.
Yeah.
And you look at that team, and even though the Nets are only one behind, I think that lead is going to widen because the Sixers have shown this year, unlike last year and the year before, that they can win without Embiid on the floor.
Yes,
and
they need a shooter, John. They need a scorer. They need a perimeter scorer desperately bad, and I expect them to do something. Do you not?
I hear that too. That's the rumor I hear, that they're looking for a 3-point shooter. I don't know any specific names, but they will probably pull the trigger on something tomorrow.
Yeah,
because tomorrow is the deadline.
Yeah, right. I think that's why we have to be careful. I don't know about you guys, and Rob, I don't know about you, but there was a couple teams I avoided tonight simply, or actually, there was a couple teams I jumped on because I thought it was a win-win for me. There's a chance that the team that they're opposing might sit a player. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I avoided those teams that were going to possibly be sellers or buyers. At least I think I did. I don't want to speak too loudly so that the basketball leprechauns hear me and curse me.
Leprechauns.
Well, last night, I'll tell you, Tone, to that point, I played Denver, thinking that at any minute Aaron Gordon or Evan Fournier was gone.
Yes.
And they do wind up winning. They're both still there, but Orlando.
I stayed away from that game because of that, Rob. And I sat there and said that game, as well as there was another game that I really liked, and I just didn't pull the trigger on it. So and I ended up being 0-1.
To the Sixers' point, John, a name that surfaced that I saw today was New Orleans is cutting J.J. Redick loose, and Philadelphia's interested in bringing J.J. Redick back. J.J. Redick lives in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. He wants to be closer to his home. New Orleans is going to get rid of that contract, and so I wouldn't be surprised. Philly's somewhat in the mix there. I don't know if they're the leader in that mix or if they're the only team in that mix, but his name surfaced with the Sixers today.
Yeah, that would be a fit. Obviously, he's a former Sixer not too long ago, two years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was one of the guys I was surprised they still didn't have the shooters I thought they needed to have then, and they let Redick go, who fills that role. He's also not the best defender in the world. He doesn't get up and down the court like I used to, like none of us would at that age or at our age.
He can fill it up though.
Yes, he can. Still
he
can.
Hasn't fit inside that system whatsoever this year. I don't know what the deal is. Why Stan Van Gundy put him to the end of the bench to start the year. But J.J. Redick has been, he's got a podcast and very, very vocal about what he thinks of his teammates. Heavy praise to Zion Williamson, who he called perhaps the best teammate he's had in his entire NBA career. And then not so much praise for assorted others on that team who he doesn't think are playing professional basketball, but they're just showing up and playing basketball. Yeah. So, I just don't think he should have been a good fit there. He should have been able to mentor a lot of those young guys, right? But it hasn't worked out that way. So for Philadelphia to get him back, like you said, John, he's been there before. Of course, it was Brett Brown and not Doc Rivers, but I feel like Redick had a stint with the Clippers as well. I can't remember exactly, but I'm sure he would fit in with Doc Rivers.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He didn't. He would fit in with Gentry much more so than he would fit in with Van Gundy. Gentry didn't want to play defense. He wanted to get up and down and shoot the ball. He won 13 second possessions. But Van Gundy did his best. If you remember when they first came out this year, they were focusing on using shot clock, playing defense. And in fact, their numbers in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season were showing that trending to that direction. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like they just ignored him, and they went back to being the former Jazz that we know, or now the Pelicans, right?
So J.J. Redick, obviously playing for the New Orleans Pelicans right now.
Yeah.
Second season with them, played Philly 2 seasons, L.A. Clippers all the way back to 2013, 2014, 1 year with Milwaukee, then Orlando, Toronto, and then Orlando all the way back to his rookie season in 06-07.
So just interested, John, the only reason why I mentioned that I thought Redick had a stint with the Clippers is because it could have been under Doc. And I don't know if those paths crossed in L.A. But
2013 through 2017.
So I guess
he was with the Clippers. Yep.
Cross paths. So he knows a little bit about his head coach. I also know that J.J. Redick and Joel Embiid are pretty close, and especially on the court when he was here, they worked very well together. In fact, they were always seemingly in the same rotation when Brett Brown was head coach. So the familiarity, the need for an outside shooter, all the pieces fit here, and I don't think J.J. Redick forgot how to shoot. I just don't think he's in the right place where he is right now.
They're not using him right. I agree. Because his production is way down. I think he's averaging like 8.7. Last year it was closer to 17.
He's fairly one-dimensional. He's not the kind of kid that's going to match up against other team's best player and be able to contain them. So I like J.J. Redick, always liked J.J. Redick, and I shouldn't like J.J. Redick because I didn't like him in college. Because I didn't like the players. I have something, I don't know what it is, but although it's changed a little bit, Zion changed some of that. I never fancied to some of the Duke players and how Coach K. There's a few of them that like to trip players and stupid stuff like that. Never learn from that stuff. As you guys all know who that is.
They're not as hated as they used to be, Tone. It's just not the same as it used to be.
All you have to do is lose it a little bit, and you're not going to be hated as much, Yankees lose, they're not hated near as much. Dallas loses, we feel sorry for them. They win, we hate them.
Yeah, the Patriots too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, no. Yeah, we can feel sorry for them. You informed
me the last show that I thought they were the only team ever to get caught cheating, and then you told me how many other teams there were that cheat, and that's something I'll never forget because it has really changed my world. Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of games to lay off for our listeners, what games would you definitely encourage people to lay off because of these possible trades and?
Robbie?
Well, I think it's more, and it's always guesswork. Now, we talked about Orlando early, and I'll tell you why, guys, I got involved in the Orlando game tonight. And not from a side perspective, but from a totals perspective. But it's the second of back-to-back. Huh? Neither Fournier or Gordon is gone yet. And I just feel like Orlando's going to use them to their fullest. The trade line isn't until tomorrow. The deadline isn't until tomorrow. And I feel like tomorrow those guys will depart. If they didn't get rid of them yesterday, chances are they're not getting rid of them today. And there's been a couple extra inquiries on Evan Fournier, at least. And Tone, you're close with a lot of beat writers, obviously. But you never really know what to believe, much like NFL draft talk and a lot of other things, what's smoke and what's actual fire.
Well, you're right. With Fournier.
Yeah, I read Dallas.
The thing about Fournier is he's said, he's verbalized, Rob, and you guys both know, he wants nothing to do with the Magic. He's not going to resign with him. And they might as well get something for him because that contract expires. So why not get something? Even somebody out there could use him. You're absolutely right. Fournier can score.
So what we're hearing is that Boston wants Aaron Gordon. Yeah. Orlando would appreciate it if they took Fournier's contract with that. Yeah. And Boston's so far willing to do that, but like I say, Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, from what I heard, have put in an inquiry for Evan Fournier. I don't know why they wouldn't put one in for Aaron Gordon, except that they just don't have the assets to get a guy like Aaron Gordon. But he would
I've
make a
said
world
that.
of difference.
I think that's a good point. I've said it
Dallas.
many times that Dallas letting Curry go was a huge mistake. At least replace him if you're going to let him go, because they have one of the worst. They have no quality bench. Everybody wants to say, listen, we need another big. You need to do something because Porzingis isn't going to hold up for the season. I disagree. They need somebody, some good role players on that bench to break these guys, and they don't have any. They don't have it. No Curry, no bench. Dallas is not a contender. Is not a title contender in my bubble at all.
I would agree with that
They
too.
don't make it into that top four. Tim Hardaway Jr. certainly is a guy that can fill it up. So if you go Luka, Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr., but there's still missing pieces on that team. You know, you can't count on Dorian Finney-Smith shooting corner threes, and you can't count on Maxi Kleber shooting three. No, these are guys that are bench players because they're not consistent. Dallas needs that one more consistent piece. And I don't even know that, Fournier, for as talented as he is offensively, Tony, he doesn't stay on the floor. He
can't stay healthy
on that injury list.
Cannot stay healthy. And
and
there, as we know, there are players that just that's just DNA. That is just nothing. No matter what no matter how proactive you are, it's going to be there, and it's hindered players not only during the season. It's created good college basketball players to be invisible in the NBA for the most part.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he's only played 25 games this year.
Yeah. And other teams, guys, real quick, because, John, you asked about teams. I mean, Toronto, obviously, the Kyle Lowry situation has been going on for weeks. We don't know where Kyle Lowry will end up.
Does he have a no trade? That's what I want to know about Kyle. I don't know if he has a no trade. Because he said, he verbalized to the press, I am going to retire a Raptor. Now, I'm sure you can entice a guy, even though he said that, you surely can entice me to play on the moon for enough whatever I want, So
Houston, a team with, as I counted this morning, 5 shooting guards. 5 shooting guards on that roster. Victor Oladipo won't be
gone.
there after the deadline. We just don't know where Victor Oladipo is going to show up, but you would think it would show up with a contender somewhere.
Denver.
Well, and you know what? Again, Gary Harris Jr., a guy who can't.
That would have to go. Gary Harris would have to go. Here's the deal, and you guys know this. A lot of these trades need a third partner, a third team, and that's the issue with some of the money, with some of the cap issues, is they have to have a third partner, and that takes a lot of work in 24 hours, right?
No, it
sure does.
I mean, the NBA trades are just, it baffles me how they even get these things worked out. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy. Teams like that is what we're looking at here, John. So it's probably bottom teams that people are trying to pick the scraps off of. And we'll see what goes on here. I would imagine most of it happens tomorrow rather than this evening. But way back to the point made by Tony, when you're betting these games, you have to be so careful that you don't step into a minefield where, tip-off comes and your team just traded 2 guys you were counting on to win you a bet tonight. So it's a little bit crazy.
Well, if you guys want to notice about Kyle Lowry's contract, the poor guy has made $157,957,917 since he came into the league in 06-07.
Almost as much as me.
I mean, I was going to say that. You weren't in the training room. You didn't have to do the daily grind. But his first contract was $1,011,000. His current contract is $33,296. The player, he has a player option and there's a team option. So I guess that means that either one of them can. The team option would apply to renewing his contract, though, right? But that ends this year. Yeah,
if they're trying to trade him, obviously that's not. I asked if he had a no trade. Some players have that no trade. That it is more prevalent in football. It seems to me. Maybe that's just because there's more players, but it seems to be more prevalent. So for the most part, if you're going to trade a player to a contender from a non-contender, these guys they're competitors. They want to compete, and they want to compete at the highest level. It's typically not difficult to convince them to go to the Lakers or go to the Clippers or LA. Also, they're a little vain. They got egos. They like the big markets because it also it offers them, believe it or not, like they need it. It offers them another source of revenue through endorsements in those major media markets that they don't need. The really who needs it is the bench guy, but it sure is New York, LA, Chicago. It's just what it is. So.
Well, you know what? And to that point, real quick, Tone, what I heard was that Oladipo wants Miami or New York.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
so.
Because he's a kid
that does make sense.
Yeah, he doesn't make what some of the other players in the NBA make. Although he's fine, we know that. But it may not only be endorsements. It might be the girls. It might be the nightlife. A lot of these guys are still young. They're still only 16 years old in mind, for the most part.
Jimmy Butler went to Miami to play dominoes
on the beach. Yeah, with Socrates.
With Cuban gentlemen that play dominoes.
That's right.
I mean, it's so funny, but everybody's got their own reasoning for why they want to go. But Victor Oladipo, I think Miami was number one on his list, and what kind of a fit he would be there?
They need to score. They've shown to be. They are who they are defensively. We know who they can be. They've taken a little step backwards. They don't have that magic they had last year at the end of the season, which was, in truth, you look at the underlying peripherals. Nothing what they did suggests that they were going to be in the finals of the NBA Finals. Nothing really, other than grit, determination, passion, and high basketball IQ.
Coach Spoelstra.
Yes, sir. Oh, we talked about this. He's Hall of Famer. He's already Hall of Famer before he took that team into a situation I never thought they would be in. So you have to respect that guy.
Well, I'm just reading something here. It's pretty current. Sixers Danny Green. Big speculation that he might be part of a Kyle Lowry acquisition by the Sixers or a Victor Oladipo.
I'm shocked that they need the shooter. If you're going to trade, I don't know that Lowry is the kind of guy that you want sitting on. Do you guys think that he sits out on the wing, grabs the ball, and shoots over long, lean NBA players? I don't see that unless he's running the point, and he's not going to run the point for the Sixers. We know that.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, Tony,
he's a penetrator in dish.
It's about a month in the making with Kyle Lowry. I mean, just living outside the Philadelphia area here, there's been Kyle Lowry talk for the last month. And basically for that reason, to take some of the ball handling responsibility away from Ben, because who we talked about before, Seth Curry, while he's a small guy, he's a shooting guard with, a lack of height. I won't say he's a small guy, but you would look at Seth Curry and think he could play point, and he can't really play point. And Shake Milton has been terrific off the bench for them, so they can get along with what they have.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're looking for a little extra.
Shake Milton. I listen. I like him, but his IQ, his basketball IQ, is not point. I'm just sorry. If you watched any of last night's game, you watch any of that game?
Yeah.
Some of the decisions he made were absolutely horrendous. Horrendous. They were fortunate to win that game.
And to the point of Lowry, a veteran who's been there and done that, and a tenacious guy on the defensive end, and Philly's got that tag right now. In my estimation, when they're healthy and they're all on the floor, and when they want to flip that switch, they're the best defensive team in the NBA. They just don't always want to flip that switch, but when they do, they put teams in an absolute phone booth, and nobody can score on them. So
when the man-child's on the floor, I agree with you 100%. They need Embiid.
They need Embiid, and Lowry's a Philadelphia kid.
Yeah.
So to come back home,
Villanova.
it all makes sense with him. We'll see.
Yeah.
But if he wants to be
that
a
defense,
for life,
that defense, Ben Simmons is by far, in my opinion, the NBA Defensive Player of the Year. All you have to do is go back to the Milwaukee game where he was matched up against Giannis, and held him to, I guess, a career low for points in the first half. Milwaukee had 29 in that game.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing better than watching him play defense against anybody.
We talked about it. I'll say it again. If he could shoot a 20-foot jumper, he's the MVP. He will be.
Yeah.
If he could learn to shoot a 20-foot jump shot, there's no doubt in my mind he's in that conversation every year as league MVP.
Yep, I agree.
And
someday that'll happen.
Because he doesn't start, he won't get the accolades. But Matisse Thybulle is not the best. I guess Ben Simmons has to be considered the best defender. Matisse Thybulle is a disruptor deluxe when he's on the floor.
Yep.
I mean,
they've got
guys. They've got
wasn't
guys.
it last year, Rob? You guys, wasn't it? Both of you seem to be Philly fans to some degree. We got a Philly baseball cap on over here on John. Wasn't it Brown who experimented with putting Simmons at the power when they were a little beat up last year? Wasn't that?
Yep.
I didn't hear. I saw a little bit of it, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. No, it's not gonna work. So
I hated that move.
On the offensive end this year, you do see Ben post up a lot, which is a good move. But he still keeps his ball handling responsibility. So it's like he comes down, he gives up the ball, they get it back to him, and he can go to work down there. So he's so flexible as a basketball player. And the only thing he doesn't have, to your point again, Tone, and the only thing he doesn't really want to get after is shooting the basketball from the perimeter. I mean, I wish he would get after it and become a better shooter. Because
it would just make it just opens. Not only does it open everything up for him, as far as driving, dishing, driving, dunking, it makes that team. It would make that team just head and shoulders more dangerous and better. Incredible.
Last show Tony brought up Magic Johnson. I always rant and rave when somebody says that Ben Simmons sucks because he can't make a jumper. That's how my friends talk. So here's Magic Johnson. 1979-80s rookie year. He averaged 0.1 three-pointers made. He made 22% of them. The next year, you would think it gets better. It doesn't. It's 17%. 20%, 0. 0%. He took a total of 7 3-pointers for the entire season. And that was a year that they won the world championship. Let's see. Oh, sorry.
He taught himself. He worked hard at becoming a better shooter. He understood. And that a lot of that, the coach can instruct Ben to do those things, but Ben has to have that desire to become a better shooter, to become a better player, to want those things, because it's not something these guys spend so much time in the locker room and on the court that it's just extra time, and it's hard work. It's hard to be as good a shooter as me, but I'm willing to, for a small salary, to help Ben out.
But here again, for his career, Magic averaged 52% shooting from the floor. He averaged 30% from threes. So Ben Simmons right now, if I'm correct, is shooting 58% from the field. And the way I look at it, the talk is that LeBron has kind of taken him under his wing and said, you could be better than me. We've all heard that rumor. But now the difference between Simmons last year and this year, and Rob, tell me if I'm wrong with this, but when he goes to the hoop, that shoulder lowers and he's stronger and he just drives and just says, get out of my way. Whereas last year he would take a couple steps into the paint and then dish it off. Now, I mean, he's going right to the hole with it and scoring. Or getting fouled.
Was nothing more frustrating, John, and that's a great point, because Ben Simmons would come down the floor on a break and cross the foul line with the dribble and almost get to the little circle there where you can't take a charge, and turn around and pass the ball back out 25 feet and start over again. What the hell are you doing?
That worked when J.J. Redick was there.
To me, the whole difference in Philadelphia this year, and especially with Ben Simmons, is in the coaching. Remember that Brett Brown and Ben Simmons' father were really good friends. And Ben was allowed to get away with just about anything that he wanted to, because Brown wasn't going to say no, because he's friends with the dad. Doc Rivers comes in, with that veteran coaching staff that he has, I think Sam Cassell is part of that staff. They've got some names on that particular staff, and they've just, again, it's from growing from a kid. The knock on those two guys, Embiid and Simmons, in this area was that they were still too childish.
Divas.
And they just weren't ready to be pros. They're playing video games till 6:30 in the morning, the night of the next day you have a playoff game. And Embiid's calling the coach at 9 o'clock saying, I have a sick stomach. Well, you haven't gone to bed all night long. So I think Doc Rivers has straightened out a lot of things with this team. And Ben Cano, as Tony said, it's his desire. Does he want to get better? Yeah. Yes. Then he will. No, then he won't. Guys, real quick here, just watching these line movements as we speak. Yep. We talked about two teams here, Toronto and Orlando. And the price tags just keep going up on these.
If you want to know if somebody got traded, just stare at this board. I'll tell you I'll tell you who got traded.
Are anticipating Toronto and Orlando to make moves here. Also, the Jazz continue to go up. I know James Harden last night was reported to have a strained neck. He played anyway. I'm sure he'll play tonight, but second of back-to-backs, I don't know. We see a lot of Utah action. This is about that time of day where heavyweights come in and play what they're going to play before the 5:30 injury report hits us.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, I don't see any. There's no indications that there's anything. Nothing's set and cast in stone. I don't see anything out there, but there's still plenty of time. It's only. Still got a couple 3 hours for most games tip off. So sometimes they'll be in the locker room. They'll be right on the starting lineup, and all of a sudden, you got to come off the floor.
Milwaukee line opened at 3.5. It's at 6. So that would, Boston needs a guard, or they're not going to contend for anything. What?
More than trade guys, that probably means that Giannis is a go. Because Giannis didn't play the other night, and he was listed as questionable all day long. So they're probably anticipating Giannis in that game because the total is, pushed up about a half a point within the last 10 minutes. So I think that's all correlating to Giannis.
I think that line is fair. I'm still, I'm all over. I'm just like I told you, this Utah 11. If Harden plays, then there's nothing. It's going to take handcuffs and a tank to keep me from the window on that game. I'm taking the 11 points.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, 8.5 opener was probably even inflated a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
I'll give you power ratings real quick, guys. We have a half a second here. My power rating number on that game showed Utah, Brooklyn. Showed Utah 7.
Yeah. Listen, there's a bunch of that tonight. Robbie, look, I have Atlanta as 6 as a 6 point even in this game over Sacramento, and I thought the 2 was 2.5 or when it was 3. I thought this is this is another one of those NBA tacos, as I call them, as a fish taco. Smells bad.
It's so funny. We talked about this maybe the other day when the three of us were on together about overnight lines and when you release plays to clients, so on and so forth. Atlanta 2.5 on the overnight was the first bet I made for myself.
Atlanta, right.
2.5.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I figured, when I wake up, I hope it's not 4, but I'll probably release this game. When I just by a split second, I missed.
I don't know when this would go. This tape, I don't know this shoot would go live. But I'll tell you right now, as long as they haven't made a decision, as long as there's nothing firm, not that he's only 23, 24 minutes a game, but if Dan Gal is ruled out, I listen. His we talked about his plus minuses. He's replaceable. He really is. He goes to the rim a little more than than some of the reserves on that team, but they're fine. There's those other guys on that team that make that Atlanta team fine without him. But I thought that's why this number was what it was. I said he's not in, but I checked. There was nothing firm yet on his status. So,
and I'll give you a quick number here because John, you put together a lot of angles and a lot of trends. But since the All-Star break, obviously Nate McMillan taking the helm at Atlanta. Since the All-Star break, Atlanta 7-0 against the number in the first half. He gets these guys out quick. They got out quick the other night. It's a couple of Kawhi threes in the last 90 seconds that stopped them from covering 6.5 the other night. And I think that to that point, I think that Trae Young missed a couple of threes in those same last 90 seconds. So Kawhi made his, Trae Young missed his, and LA, a team that really didn't deserve that cover, got that cover.
Okay. Yeah, it's
a pretty interesting board
in a way.
Interesting stuff tonight. It's always fun. Trade deadlines in all sports are pretty fun. Football, baseball, basketball, a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You guys want to hit the NCAA Saturday card here in a couple games? Let's start with. Let's see. We'll might start with Oregon State Loyola, and you guys know I have Loyola in the futures. I'm getting tired of hearing the media say they're the Cinderella team, because at the end of the day, I would not be surprised if they're Final Four. I further wouldn't be surprised if they cut down the nets, because when you look at them, they're the real deal. What they've been able to accomplish the last couple of years, and now again, they're the real deal. And I think they're going to smoke Oregon State. I don't think Oregon State. It's been a great run for Oregon State and their fans. I always try not to be too negative because
I'll be negative for you, John. Yeah, this is a team that's fixed. This is a team that was picked to finish 12th in the Pac-12 by the coaches. What they've done. Yeah,
I agree. On my numbers, I have them ranked 75th in the nation. I have Loyola 16th. I think this game could be a 20-point blowout. That's how much I like Loyola.
I'll just give it away. I released and I played the Ramblers. I am on them in this game. Oregon State has shot so far above and beyond their skill set. That's what they did. UCLA helped them by not defending the perimeter, but what they did against Oklahoma State was if they can get a lead. Listen, if they jump out to a 10-point lead, they're very capable of holding on for dear life because they can defend. But you're right, John. No. This team is that's the Cinderella team in this matchup is Oklahoma State, not Loyola. They would be the shock. They would be the surprise, in my opinion.
And we talked about the p-value last time. There's a ton of team trends that I've been looking at the last day that are matured. That's what I call it. It's like watching the stock market and they regress. So one of them here is Oregon State's 14-1 after covering 5 or 6 or 7 of their last 7 games this season. So the problem with that trend alone is that it's one season, very short sample size. It's not 20 seasons, and it's specific. It's like backfilling it to come up with something outstanding. Another one, 17-2 Oregon State is after playing a game as an underdog. That's bullcrap. It means nothing. Absolutely
let me tell you,
nothing.
I'll throw this in. Trends, I'm a trend guy, but only trends. I only pay attention to trends that are point spread or handicap related. And that means, listen, those trends make perfect sense to me because why? Because Oregon State is who they are. And even after they win a game, they're typically still play that role of the underdog. And so when they've gotten hot or they've played well, those trends make perfect sense to me. See, but they're situational, and this is a completely different animal. This is a different animal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those trends I mentioned on Oregon State and how high the winning percentages makes that mathematically will tell me to take Loyola.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to go to 20-1. It's just not going to happen.
No, as soon as you tell me Rob is 20-1, I'm buying his stuff so I can fade it.
Listen,
isn't that the truth? I mean, we've had customers buy us when we're red hot, right?
Yeah.
And you almost inherently know, like, what, buy me when I had an 0-for-3 Sunday, like I just did.
Yeah, no.
Now that's the time to get on board.
Yeah. Listen, go ahead and buy us when we're 21. But I'll be the first one to tell you if you call me, you don't want me right now. I'm the last person you want right now. I can't possibly find any. I can't find I can't be drunk hung over off a 3-day bender and find a winner, and then all of a sudden I'm straight eyed and sober, and I won't be able to find one if I'm 21. Yeah.
Very good. So
Okay.
I think Rob, you're on Loyola too. I presume, so we can probably move to the next game here, which is Syracuse Houston. Now I love saying this because Syracuse, whenever they're the misfit, meaning that the media says, "Oh, well, they shouldn't have got in. They didn't deserve to get in." Look at Michigan State having to play in. Well, it looks pretty good right now that the committee got it right. But more importantly, Boeheim, whenever he, my words, is the misfit, seems to be in the Sweet 16 and beyond. So coaching pedigree cannot ever be underestimated. And, why is this line only 6? If Houston's that good against a Syracuse team that everybody said sucked, you would think it should be 9 or 10. And that is telling me that Syracuse would be my play or nothing.
Well, and Rob, I think you might know, knowing Syracuse and knowing, at least I know a little bit how you handicap. There's one variable here that really, when you play a zone defense, you give up a large percentage of second chance points, offensive rebounds, and there is no better. There may not be a better rebounding team in college basketball, and this is saying a lot about Sampson's team than Houston. They have some of their success is dependent on that, and that's where they have. If they want to attack this glass, they can really put Boeheim and his players in a desperate mode, in my opinion.
And they've had a whole week to prepare for the zone. Yeah, that's big.
I'll add to it, Tone.
Yeah.
Not only is Houston one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the nation. Never mind and I get the AAC has some inferior competition.
Oh, yeah. I like them.
Lane. You go through a lot of BS teams, South Florida, Central Florida. Yeah. They're the best, one of the best offensive rebounding teams. In this tournament, there is no worse offensive rebounding team than Syracuse. They're getting killed.
So, you're right.
They've gotten by making 3-point shots. I'll give you the numbers. Yeah. In 2 games so far in this tournament, Syracuse has allowed 34 offensive rebounds, and they've gotten 9. They're minus 25 in 2 games.
That's big.
Buddy Boeheim now wears a bullseye on his chest for until the mid-February, until the end of February, 3/4 of the nation didn't even know Jim Boeheim's son was on this team. All right, now everybody knows. Everybody with a bracket knows. The Houston Cougars and Kelvin Sampson with that defense, they know. With the comeback that they made against Rutgers the other night was remarkable. Rutgers had that game locked and sealed.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Was that more Rutgers or was that more Houston? That's a good question.
A little bit of both. 58-49, and you need some breaks. You need Rutgers to miss a dunk.
That's a meltdown, my friend. You need Rutgers to miss
a free throw, but you get outscored 14-2 down the stretch. Kelvin Sampson's team has toughness.
Yeah, they do.
The Syracuse team probably doesn't. I would much rather see against this zone defense. I would much rather have Houston, which is a 4-guard team.
Yep.
That can all go to the rim and are not afraid. To use an NBA analogy, it's like having 4 Kyle Lowrys, right?
They're swings.
Will get there. They're
big punishers. Guards, big physical, tough guards,
and they'll shoot their free throws.
Yeah.
To me, I don't see Syracuse getting by this round, to tell you the truth. They would have to shoot at a crazy percentage again from 3. And I just don't think when you have – listen, Baylor's guards got after Wisconsin's 3-point shooters, and it was lights out. The team with the next best quartet of guards built in the same mode is Houston. Baylor and Houston are kind of similar, except Baylor's more skilled. So to me – I think I'd lean on Kelvin Sampson here. It's interesting, guys. I went through the venues just to see. And in this particular game, Syracuse in their first game played in Hinkle Fieldhouse. They've shot well in both games, but they shot exceptionally well against San Diego State there. And this will be the first trip for Houston into Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Okay.
They played at a couple different arenas. But I just think, Tony, I don't think that, and John, I don't think that Kelvin Sampson will tell his team shoot threes against this zone of Boeheim. They're going to attack that zone. and there's always openings at the free throw line, et cetera. And for driving, penetrating guards, there are openings. I think they're quicker. I think they're tougher. And if the boards come into play, which they should, Houston can miss a lot of shots and score a lot of points. They haven't shot well in this tourney, guys. Houston's only shot 35% for the entire tourney, and they're 2-0 because they don't need to shoot well first shot because they'll get the second, they'll get the third, they'll get to the free throw line.
Especially if you're playing a zone against them. Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yeah, the responsibilities in the zone are when you're the defensive team, the responsibilities are all over the place.
Yes, they are.
I mean, think about it. I'm looking at the numbers here while you guys were talking. 39.9% of missed shots, they get the offensive board. And that ranks number 1 in the nation by a lot.
Yes.
They're averaging 13 offensive rebounds per game, ranking 3rd. Yes. But generally, they play slower than the average Division I team.
Yes, they do.
So Syracuse, on their defensive glass, and there's 357 Division I programs, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's 350 some.
Well, there's only this year. There's 27 that aren't playing, or they quit playing, because of the COVID. So I know Ivy. My shirt says Harvard. Said Ivy League isn't in it either.
Right. But Syracuse ranks 331st in defensive opponents' offensive rebound percentage. So every missed shot, they're allowing them a second chance opportunity 32% of the time.
Yeah.
So unless Buddy's going to put up 50, I agree with you guys. Buddy will put up 50, Syracuse probably wins. Anything short of that, Houston probably rolls.
And if he puts up 50, they're going to make him shoot from such distance. Those things are going to be 4-point shots against Houston. They're not going to be normal outside. One thing to look at real quick, guys, is, Houston did it against Cleveland State. And believe me, I had Cleveland State plus 20, and in the second half, that was an avalanche. But they lost their point guard, Giroux, in the first minute of that game.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't play against Syracuse. And I'm trying to check the injury information for him right now, but he's an important piece in that 4-guard offense. So you want to check the injury to the point guard, Houston, Giroux. If he's back, makes them even tougher.
I'll be transparent in this game, this Houston game. Houston's not only are they everything that you guys have said they are. If you don't have a good point guard, they will pressure. They're a good defensive team. And I played the under in the under the 140 here. I thought that would drop. I saw that it held serve pretty much, but if Syracuse does what I think they have to do to win this game, one of those things they have to do is they can't be leaking, out of that zone. They have to find a guy and bury, put him, basically put him on your hip, grab him, cheat, do whatever you got to do to keep them from hitting. They have to rebound at least 75% or more of missed shots, or they're not going to be in this game. I agree with you. Yes. So
and fundamentally, where Tony's going with that, real quick here, guys, is if you're Syracuse and you're Jim Boeheim, nobody wants to play against Houston's half-court defense when it's set. Because you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get a last-second heave at the shot clock. So the idea is, we have to get out and go when we have opportunities, because you can't win a half-court game against these guys. But you can't get out and go unless you grab a defensive board.
That's right.
And if you can't defensive rebound, you're not going anywhere.
That's right.
There's so many fundamental things, X and O-wise, stacked against Syracuse in this game. The only thing in their favor is, hey, we're shooting three-pointers. Great. Well,
and they're Syracuse. And Jim, I said it before the tournament starts. People said, what's Syracuse doing here? I said, listen, underestimate Jim Boeheim. I don't care how big a dog he's going to win the first. He doesn't. They're not exiting the first round. They're not unless they're a 16 seed. They're absolutely. They've gotten gifted in, and they're playing Gonzaga. Then they probably exit.
Agree.
They're not.
Yeah. Yep.
So
it's a great breakdown. I mean, there's no question who the better team is. And then I'm looking at free throw percentage here.
Yes.
Syracuse has a slight edge in that, but
surprising, by the way, because Jim doesn't typically have great free throw shooting teams.
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
Carmelo Anthony back then in the day.
Yeah,
but
that was
free throw percentage.
Yeah.
Well, free throw attempts to field goals attempt, that ratio.
Oh, that ratio.
Houston,
Well, yeah.
Houston's not that impressive. It's .313,
The way they
170th.
play their half courts, listen, they're not big. They don't go out with the intention of drawing fouls. They don't
Right.
need to. They really don't need to. There's some teams that just have to because they're just not a very good shooting team, or they don't execute their offense. They're not. Their skill set forces them to be that team. We know players like that all over the place, even in the NBA.
So given that fact,
Yeah.
Syracuse ranks 232nd, averaging 17 free throws a game.
Right.
So even though Houston doesn't need to get to the line to win and score points, Syracuse just doesn't get to the line.
They're not the most. Listen, they're not the most talented team Jim's had. Coach Jim's had for this is pretty. And I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but I think they're a fairly young team. Am I not mistaken? I know. Listen, Houston. I know for a fact that Houston, for instance, is they're not. They're just kind of a middle pack team as far as experience goes and continuity. If you trust the professors, continuity numbers, those kind of things. But I don't know. You guys will know better. I don't watch a lot, but I'm guessing that Syracuse is a younger team even than Houston. Am I wrong about that?
When the guard positions are concerned, Houston, the four guys we're talking about here, a junior, a senior, a freshman, and a sophomore. So they've got one of everything in there. To the point about free throw shooting, 3 of those 4 guards shoot at 76% or better. So at the end of game, if you're going to foul one of their guards, chances are their guards are going to make free throws like they did the other day. And then back to the injury with Giroux, I just saw now questionable still for Saturday.
Yes.
But I'd have to believe today's Wednesday. A couple more practices. If there's any way he can go, he'll go. But maybe Rutgers was an exact form of Houston, just a little less experience, a little less. It was the first time Rutgers was there. But really, Rutgers and Houston was like looking in a mirror at each other. They both play the same way. And they ground that one out without their starting point guard. I just don't know that they can't beat this team. Now, they haven't played anybody. I don't know. Tone, in a power rating battle, I know they play different styles, but in a power rating battle, Rutgers and Syracuse are right there. No, I mean they're probably on a neutral. They pick them.
If you're going straight numbers, there's no doubt in my mind. Listen, there's a lot of those teams. I thought Rutgers was a little bit. Those numbers. My numbers are a little tainted with Rutgers because of some of the things that happen in the Big Ten, some of the things they're faced with. But absolutely. There's no doubt. Listen, Rutgers, they're a gritty little team. There's a lot of intangibles that team violated. They violated some numbers because they played hard. So that's worth a lot. That's difficult to measure, put on paper, and say this team plays harder than this team. It's just that's eye candy, and we've all seen it. We know it. So yeah. It's Rutgers. If you're in Rutgers, if you decided to go to Rutgers, and I apologize to all you Rutgers fans, but it's like Waco, Texas. I'm not going to Rutgers. I'm not going to Manhattan, Kansas either. But Bill Snyder found a way to win at the worst football program in the history of NCAA football. Bill Snyder comes from Iowa and absolutely just wins. Now I know coaches. Listen, I know a lot of coaches that coached with him that quit because Bill Snyder said, "You're going to work 100 hours a week. Well, you're not going to work for me," and that's who he was. He was an animal. Honest as the day is long in the summer, but these guys had families, and it's that. Even now, they're getting away from some of that stuff. That they don't expect the same things that they expected 20 years ago. So, yeah, Rutgers, tough. It's tough. Hell, to get from your dorm to class, you have a bodyguard.
It starts from the head coach, Steve Peichel.
A lot of good restaurants, though, Tony. A lot of good restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, exit 9 right off 95 in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Steve Peichel found a way to get Ron Harper's kid to go to that program.
I know.
Right? I mean,
listen,
Ron Harper Jr. is a player, and he goes to Rutgers. So,
what's his prognosis as far as the next level? Because when I watched him play, I know he's a big kid. It looks like he's athletic, but he just looked soft. I mean, I don't mean saw. I mean, just physically, kind of looked like he was an NBA player's son that was entitled.
Yeah, he's not his dad, right? For those who remember his dad,
Yes.
his dad was a tough.
Yes, he
point guard,
was.
a very
Yes, he
tough.
was.
He's a forgotten piece of that Chicago Bulls
Not for me.
run through the '90s. But
Not for me.
Yeah,
Not
he
forgotten.
doesn't resemble his dad in any way, shape, or form.
No, he does not.
Physicality is concerned.
Yeah.
Good player though.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was looking up here Houston returning starters. So on the Houston team, 73% of the minutes played from last season and 79% of the scoring returned from last year's team. The average height is 6'5", average years experience 1.8. Then we go over to Syracuse. Syracuse average height 6'6". They have an advantage there. Average years 1.6, slightly less. Average 76% of the minutes played, but only 71% of the scoring.
Yeah.
So the definite advantage in the senior leadership. They have one senior on Houston. Syracuse is junior, sophomore, junior, one senior, sophomore, freshman, sophomore, freshman.
You brought something to my attention that you guys will know this, but people don't know. But when Quinton Grimes was a freshman, it was going in to play for Bill Self. Bill Self recruited Quinton Grimes, okay? And he took them on that European tour. And Quinton Grimes was the MVP of that European tour. As a dead cold, never played 1 minute of college basketball. He's a damn good player, and a lot of people don't know who this kid is. But he's playing because he leaves Kansas and goes to Houston. So obviously KU's getting a little more coverage than Houston.
Yeah, and I mean the sophomore. I mean that's why it's hard to go by years of experience in college basketball because Marcus Sasser's a sophomore. Now Quinton Grimes, I think. We're splitting hairs here, but there's some that would tell you Sasser's the better player.
I would.
He walked in and played every game. So just because he's a sophomore, I think, John, the number that you read on minutes returning is way more indicative how many minutes these kids played. And
that couldn't be. That's a good point. A so good point because when everyone wants to know returning starters in college football, I don't pay attention to returning starters. I pay attention to returning production, not who the starters are. I don't care if you've returned 22 starters. If you had negative 5 yards of offense, you still suck, even though you return.
Especially in football.
Yes. So you're right. That's a very good point. Very good point, Bob.
Well, with the time we have left, let's do one more game, and then we'll come back tomorrow or Friday for the other 4 games that are taking place in the Sweet 16 on Sunday. Yeah. As long as you guys have time to join me for that. So now we're going to look at Villanova Baylor. And I know Rob's going to have a lot to talk about because Villanova's kind of in his backyard.
Yeah.
And here again, you have Gillespie that's out for Villanova. They've probably had the easiest 2 games to get to the Sweet 16 of any seed, in my opinion. But they're there. And Jay Wright cannot be underestimated. Mm-hmm. And the line is Baylor 6.5. Again, inherently my gut was telling me I was expecting like 8. Because Villanova they're up against the wall against Baylor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I know Tony likes Baylor because he knows where they're located.
And their coach is one of the best in-game coaches ever in the history of coaching. No.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can overcome the coach. You can overcome a coach sometimes.
Dell Computers right down the road from Waco, so that's a pretty big place.
I got a couple oil wells down there right outside of Waco too, I have a couple tacos bar, little food stands right underneath my wells. But I don't want to be in Waco.
I'll tell you off topic, but I've been to Waco for baseball when my son was playing, 15, 16, 17, and the steaks. You go to a steakhouse, it is phenomenal. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. My cholesterol, I don't need any extra cholesterol. I got plenty of that too.
Well, you would add a lot if you spend a week there
I'm a Kansas City
eating
kid, so
meat.
we ate in the bottoms there all the time in KC, and some of the great steaks. Yeah, listen,
Yep.
that you can't get that. We got cactus fed beef out here where I'm staying at. It's the worst crap. No
It's like,
grade, no
So,
grade.
if you're off the East Coast too, Tony, and again, we're off topic here real quick, but
Yeah, yeah,
when I moved from Connecticut to Las Vegas,
yeah.
and of course you're on the Atlantic Ocean coast
Mhm.
where I come from,
Yep.
and lobster is lobster. When you get to Las Vegas and the buffet is featuring Maine lobster, Mane,
Yep.
you know that you're not going to have good lobster that night.
Nope.
So lobster in the desert doesn't work. Cows in the desert don't really work, or
Nope.
cattle.
Listen,
So
I'm okay. I just, I freeze some. I do the best I can. I mix a little bit of water because tequila doesn't freeze very well. But I freeze my margaritas and I have them for dinner. That's good. My calories that way. Vitamins. I don't need any more vitamins. I'm old. I'm dying. So
no vitamins. Baylor Villanova, John.
yeah.
Real quick.
Well, John, don't. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Without Colin Gillespie, this might be the game where they run into trouble. Again, we talked about teams with 4 guards. Here come your guards. Everybody saw them on full display. I think a lot of people were quick to write Baylor off because they came off the COVID pause and they didn't resemble Baylor, especially defensively. They didn't resemble the Baylor team before they hit the COVID pause. But it seems like all of those anxieties got straightened out for people on Sunday, because now Baylor's all you hear about. Baylor, Gonzaga again. And, it's funny. If we turn the clock back 6 weeks, Baylor, Gonzaga, Michigan.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting here right now, and it seems like Baylor, Gonzaga, Michigan.
Yeah.
At that point 6 weeks ago, Illinois wasn't in the talk. Then Illinois became the talk, and now Loyola put an end to the talk. So I think without Colin Gillespie, this is probably the spot where they run into a whole lot of trouble, because Baylor can guard like crazy on the perimeter. Jay Wright was able, and again, there's no end to his ability to coach, but he was able to coach this team through 2 games, I think, because because you don't recognize the names, you don't recognize the talent. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, you could argue he's the best forward all around, both sides of the floor in this tournament. The guy's tremendous on the defensive end, comes up with all the points on the offensive end. But I don't think they're going to stop this team. This team, number 1 in the nation in 3-point shooting. How are you going to defend all 4 of these guys if you're Villanova? I don't think you can. I don't think, long story short, I don't think Jay Wright can come up with a coaching blueprint to stop this team. Not only stop them on the offensive end, but to be able to successfully attack them on his offensive end. Now, again, Robinson Earl should be able to, and maybe they'll go to the interior in this game against Baylor. But a lot of times to get the ball to the interior, you have to get it through the perimeter. And when there's a bunch of hands out there up in your face, it's hard to entry pass. Kind of a lost art now to entry pass in college basketball. So as much as I respect him as a head coach, I think he's outmanned talent-wise. And I would be really, really, really surprised, guys, if Villanova won this game. Just because I think the talent on the other side is so much better. And in these tournaments, it's a cliche, but it seems to come true all the time, is that guards win these NCAA tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
And Houston has a relentless assault of guards that can shoot it, that can defend. They've got a couple of big guys. Vital at only 6'5", rebounds like he's 6'10" for Baylor. So I think he's got his hands full here. And we've seen a little bit of increase, right? I think it opened 6 and went to 6.5. Early money on the Baylor side. All that being said, if you're going to bet Baylor, you bet them now, because you don't want to wait because every single $50 bettor who saw that game against Wisconsin last week and has heard all these people talk on television this week is going to bet Baylor. It wouldn't surprise me if it closes 7. So I think if you're going to get to Baylor, you want to get to them now. There's a possibility, guys, this game gets over the number. I looked at the total too. I think that over, when Baylor's really rolling and shooting the threes, they're scoring big numbers. The Big 12 had an identity this season of being full of defensive teams, which is not false. But in that league as well, there were some really high-scoring games played between the Baylors, the Oklahoma States, the Texases of the world. So these teams can get up and down and score too. I kind of like Baylor, and I think I would like over in this game.
Listen,
What do you guys think of this?
Okay.
With Baylor's roster, they have 3 players in double digits. Davion Mitchell is 14.2. He's ranked 3rd team high. Then it drops to 8.7. Now, Villanova, without Gillespie, has 5 double-digit scores. And as we were talking about with the 4-star recruits coming off the bench that we never heard of, I'm looking at them right now. Here's a freshman, Cole Swider, St. Andrews High School, Providence, Rhode Island. He was 39th ranked high school player in 2018. Brandon Slater, he's a junior, but he played as a freshman then because he was ranked 52nd, 2018. Then there's this kid, 2019, who's ranked 16th overall best player, who would be really flying under the radar, but he's a guard, 6'5", 190, sophomore, Brian Antone, I guess is how you pronounce it. He wears number 1. Yeah. So, Rob, you know Villanova better than anybody I know. Do you think there's a possibility that Jay Wright gets one of these 4-star guys in? I mean, ranked 16th, wouldn't that be a 5-star? If you're ranked that high, that would be a 5-star recruit, right?
Yeah,
and
without
this
being a guy, without knowing exactly how they do it, but it would be logical, right, John? I mean, you're 16th, you have to be a 5-star. You're in the top percentile of all players in the country, and I would say this to the young guys, to the young talent: you're dropping them into a Sweet 16 environment now. Yeah. I'm not so sure. Colin Gillespie was a 4th-year senior point guard leader. And when things start to go awry in the midst of an 8-0 spurt or in the midst of a 10-2 spurt, and this team is pressuring, and you don't have Colin Gillespie, but you've got some blue chip that is dropped into a Sweet 16. I don't know how that doesn't work for me, betting wise, and I don't know that it would work for. If there's ever a coach that can teach composure to a team and how to stay even keel, it's Jay Wright.
Beard, right?
Crispy. It's Jay Wright. But I just don't know, John, against this team. It just seems to me it's a bad matchup. And again, they were able to hold Winthrop to lousy shooting. Yeah. They were able to hold North Texas. North Texas is not a great shooting team to begin with. Hold them to lousy shooting. You're talking about the number 1 3-point shooting team in all of the nation. And it's not because of one guy. See, if it's one guy like Buddy Buckets over at Syracuse, you can put a bullseye on that one guy's chest and you can attack him. But when it's 4 guys, it's troublesome. And
Villanova was shorthanded before they were shorthanded. Even with Gillespie, they were playing primarily a 7-man rotation, two guys coming in. If you look at the percentage, if he plays less than 15, let's say less than 12% of the minutes, he's essentially invisible. And that's what you have with Nova. First off, Winthrop was vastly overrated. They've only lost 1 game, and it was this. Well, take a look at Winthrop's schedule, and it matters. It matters that if you get to the Super Bowl undefeated, and you were a Canadian NFL team or a middle of the road NFL team playing in the Canadian Football League, and you're going to play the real Super Bowl, it matters. And they just didn't play anybody. They had no quality. They weren't prepared for Villanova. Listen, Villanova's even Villanova's guys. Their 10th guy on the bench that is invisible is going to be an absolute stud star with Winthrop, and that's all there is to it.
Yep.
So here, as you both said, as Rob said, this is Baylor. This isn't Winthrop. This isn't the Mean Green of and not the Steelers' Mean Green. It's just not the same thing. This Baylor team is back. They looked dangerous. They looked so good that last game that I was with a couple of my neighbor buddies who are degenerates too, and they were over here. They were over here, and we looked at each other and said, "This team plays like this They are the team that can beat the Zags. And they were right. They're right. Now, again, it's also the Texas, Winthrop. They're not Gonzaga. So we have all these variables that come into play. I'm telling you right now, as soon as this line came out, as soon as Baylor came out, I jumped them because as good as Jay Wright, as much respect as I have Jay Wright, and he could put blindfold on and have somebody have a vice on his gonads, he could outcoach you know who. Yep. But they're not going to beat Baylor unless they are just perfect, and Baylor stinks. That's it.
Yeah, it's going to have to be that way. You know, guys, if you just look at Baylor's last opponent, which was Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Senior laden.
Yeah, listen. Yeah, I agree. Listen, that's a tough matchup. I don't care how bad or how beat up Wisconsin is. Bart, it's just going to be tough. You know it. I know it. Those kids are tough in Wisconsin. We talk about Rutgers. Well, hang out in Madison's a pretty rough town, too. I'm just kidding. But no, you're tough when you play. You're tough when you play for Wisconsin.
Real quick, guys, I would say that Wisconsin brought things to the table that Villanova is unable to bring to the table.
You're right.
Wisconsin, for what it's worth, Micah Potter at 6'11", was a guy who could go inside or outside.
Yeah.
He shoots threes very, very well, and there was a lot of pregame idea that maybe he was going to be a difference maker. And Davison is a senior ball handler, and Demetrius Trice is a senior ball handler and three-point shooter. So they had a lot of elements here. Five seniors.
Now, you're right.
And they came from the league's toughest conference, apparently.
Yep.
They came from the largest but mediocre conference in the world, and that's the Big Ten. Everybody's good, just not great. Michigan aside, maybe.
Yeah. Point being, Villanova probably doesn't have those assets.
No, they don't have the wind. Listen, if Baylor can do anything you want, they can play any way you don't want them to play. That's how athletic and talented this team is. You're right, Rob. When you said
they can play
that,
slow or fast. Yes. Absolutely.
And
Hinkle Fieldhouse.
It's Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Yeah, Isn't that where the movie Hoosiers was?
Maybe.
Well,
I've been meaning to ask you guys that.
I thought it was in a studio out in L.A., but maybe they did film it. I'm sure they did. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie.
If it means anything, Baylor will have a great feeling being back in Hinkle Fieldhouse because that's where they played Wisconsin Sunday, and they look pretty good at that venue. It'll be the first trip into Hinkle for Villanova.
How is the background? Is Hinkle? I know Hinkle is historic, but there's some.
I think it is. That's where they had the championship, state championship game in that movie.
It's just some places the background's hard to. If you're there for the first time, if you're a 3-point shooting team, sometimes you're at a disadvantage. But if they've been there, that's another stake in one of the other Villanova players' hearts that's still able to play. They're just too short-handed, guys.
Yeah. I agree.
For to put a ribbon on this thing, I would have to think our best bet for the show, based on the sentiment I was getting from you guys and myself, is Loyola.
I agree. No, I like them. Yeah. You
agree with that, Rob? Or
I don't know if they could have got a better matchup for a Sweet 16. Can you?
It's
I think they.
What each of those teams does well, the other does well, right? I mean, they're terrors at the 3-point perimeter defense. Oregon State hasn't allowed anybody to shoot it. Loyola's not going to let them shoot it. It's the one thing Oregon State's done tremendously well: shoot the 3-pointer. Loyola's not going to allow it.
And
I favor Loyola because what they did to Illinois Sunday, guys, and it goes back to your point, John, about saying you're tired of people calling them Cinderella. It was no fluke. They all played that team from start to finish. If they changed jerseys, you would have thought Loyola was the 1 seed and the other side was the 8 seed. They were the better team.
I agree.
They're that disciplined. They're that well coached. And what Krutwig did to Kofor in that game, I mean, he's not going to see a more difficult matchup in the pivot. Oregon State's got big guys, but they're not Kofor
Right.
or Coburn,
Yep.
excuse me, Kofi Coburn.
When Loyola Chicago guys lost early, it was in mid-December when they lost to Wisconsin and to Richmond. They lost. They were 2-3-2 or something like that coming out. They weren't right yet. They got a late start. They didn't play any November games. I don't know if it was a COVID issue, whatever it was. They weren't right yet. So people look back and say, look at this loss. They lost to Wisconsin. They lost to Richmond. Well, I tell you, Richmond was better then. There's a game we're not in that tournament, but I telling you right now, I think Mississippi State's going to destroy Richmond too because Richmond's not right. They're not. So huh?
And
I mean, after that, they lost to Indiana State and Drake. Both of those games that Chicago lost are acceptable. They're conference games, and there's nothing wrong. Indiana State was decent. They were capable, and Drake. We all know the story of Drake. I mean, it is what it is. So
if you need a winning game plan, just go to Sister Jean's pregame prayer, because what she said before the game, could it have turned out any more accurate than what she said before the game? And it was crazy.
You're playing God here. I mean, truthfully is that yeah, you're right. Without question, you better have said your prayers and better have been in church last Sunday, guys, because you're facing more than 5 guys on a basketball court in this team.
If they both win, I'm trying to find a bracket here, guys. Which region? Loyola's a Midwest region.
I didn't make much attention. I didn't pay any attention. I think they're south, weren't they?
If Loyola wins, they would play the winner of Houston, Syracuse. Okay. That's what I was looking at. I was trying to see if, because in the rotation, Oregon State Loyola is on top of Villanova Baylor. I thought maybe if they both advanced, you would see Loyola Baylor, but you will see.
This is another team, guys. When Oregon State advanced, I was just staring at some of my apps, waiting for this number to come out too. I was hoping it would be a little less than it was. Really, I was, because of their Missouri Valley is just, since the departures of Creighton and Wichita State, et cetera, we don't know Missouri Valley is what Missouri Valley is. Not very good. I mean, from top to bottom, there's a big gap. But I played them. I jumped them because I'm telling you, there is Villanova. They haven't made Gillespie's out. I still think oddsmakers have not made proper adjustments for what Gillespie meant to this team, and that's why you saw that 6, Rob. Because if you go look at the professor, he's got that at basically a 6-point game, and but that's really almost the same rating they had with Gillespie, and you have to make an adjustment for Gillespie. It's not just his peripherals. As you said, what he does on the court, the intangibles are gone. They're gone,
and they're enormous.
That's right.
One thing that helps keep that number where it is the fact that Villanova has been impressive in 2 wins, so it keeps the Jay Wright can coach mantra going for an extra game, which guys like us that are looking for a time to jump, it's a great opportunity when you have something like that going for you. I too like Baylor quite a bit. And I'll say this about that Oregon State-Oklahoma State game. Loyola will not panic the way Oklahoma State panicked.
No, they won't.
I mean, Oklahoma State got behind by 8 in the first half, and it looked like they were down 20 with a minute.
Yeah, they're babies.
Thinking,
that's their Achilles. That was a caveat with them. You're right, Rob. They're young. This is a really young Oklahoma State team with, and they panicked. Not just this game. There was times during the regular season in conference play that they panicked. Yeah.
Loyola will not panic.
No, they won't.
Loyola goes
they will not panic.
They're not going to panic.
Sister Jean won't let them. Damn it.
Yeah, he's a really good coach. He's a really good coach.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Really is.
Yeah, it's a great show. So we're going to come back Thursday or Friday. We'll figure out it, and we'll let the followers know.
Right.
And we'll do the other 4 games, look at the NBA like we did today.
And I'll try not to talk so much about Sister Jean and tequila and stuff like that. And we'll talk more, we'll try. I'll try. I have a hard time.
I'm looking forward to a show where you talk about Texas, because I hear you know an awful lot about Texas and some of the cities in Texas. And
I pretend to.
If we don't go off on tangents, maybe we'll squeeze Oral Roberts Arkansas in on Friday because that's the
Oh,
one
yeah, yep.
on Saturday. And that's
I'd like
gonna
to
be
talk a
big
little bit
game
about
as
this
well.
depth thing
Yeah.
we discussed, though we didn't got to it. But I'm the contrary to anybody who thinks depth's important in this conference tournament. It is I take it completely out of my equation, completely. In fact, if you have lots of depth, you're at a disadvantage. You get 10 guys playing 10 minutes at minimum. You're at Florida State. You're at a disadvantage.
It always seems to bite.
Well, we'll
Leonard
definitely-
Hamilton in the rear end.
Yes.
We'll definitely pick on that on the Thursday or the Friday show, and we'll let you guys
Perfect.
know. I can't thank you fine gentlemen enough for making my afternoon so special, and hopefully the people in the chat room felt the same way, because this is a cool way to learn betting.
Give me
You
your
know, and
address.
even
Tell them
though I've been doing
we'll
it,
sign all the programs. We'll sign them. Just send them in, guys.
all right, so for the Predictive Playbook, I am John Ryan on behalf of Rob Veno and Tony Finn at WagerTalk.com. Make sure you get over there and get their packages. These guys are veteran professionals. You won't find anyone better. So take my advice and do it. And then buy my package too.
Yeah.
And
I got
may
Oklahoma.
all the wins be yours.
Yes.
Thanks.